I'll leave it up to you.
Hey, fantastic. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Danica and the Acquire team. And a very interesting thought there, Simon, I guess, AI, fear of missing out, right? So we've started this topic today actually with agentic AI. So we're going to take that theme, and this is kind of a primer or an introduction, if you like. And this session content, I'll walk through some prepared material. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A, so probably about halfway through. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll try and take those on board and hopefully give you some stories and insights into where this space is going. So without further ado, let me try and share my screen. And let me just call up the session today. And I just need to move some things around. And can I just get a yay if that's in full screen? Is that coming through okay?
Yes, it is.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, thumbs up. Oh, very kind. All right, here we go. So the session abstract online was that the future is agentic, unlocking business value with IBM's agentic AI. As Simon mentioned, I'm one of the AI practitioners within IBM across Australia and New Zealand. Part of my role is to help explain some of these technologies to friends, family, and customers. And this session is a collection, if you like, on some current thought leadership about agentic AI. It's growing in popularity. We just had a Gartner event in Sydney, and it was one of the key themes. So if you're curious about this space, hoping this will help. I'm going to start with what agentic AI looks like. So what does that transformation mean across the industry? What are some of the outcomes that it can deliver? And then I'm going to talk about IBM's own journey in this space. So when you use these tools and technologies, they're built on the back of research and some worldwide adoption. So you can see the sort of returns and where it's being applied. We'll have a quick discussion about the lessons learned. And finally, I'll talk about how you can get started on your own journey. And I do find with these sessions, it's really a case of take your own journey, move at your own pace, your own comfort level, but there is a lot of potential that can be delivered. So let's start with this concept. What would it be like if you had your own digital concierge? If you had something, a device, a bot, a chat screen that could help you do your day-to-day work. And more than that, not only could it do activities and scheduling and actual work, but it would also be personalized. It would know your preferences. It would know things like your location, what you need in certain activities. We are very close to realizing that capability right now. And we've been talking about this concept of virtual assistants, and it's about providing that agency, if you like, to assist you in your day-to-day productivity. That was always the promise of AI, is to be a productivity tool, but making it accessible and personalized to your needs and workflow, that's the big advent about agentic AI. So let's talk about what is an AI agent. Sounds kind of like spyware, but it's actually, the concept is something that acts with agency. In other words, autonomously. It does things like work tasks and workflow on behalf of a user or another system. So an AI agent is dynamic. It helps proceed and deliver work across multiple workflows and systems. So that's really the concept of an AI agent. So agentic AI is the delivery of those agents across the workplace. Now, this agentic AI, to firstly call out, is slightly different from generative AI. There's been a lot of talk in market about generative AI, and that's ever been since the advent of ChatGPT in 2022. So since that had gained popular consciousness, we understand generative AI is an ability for tools really to create content. That's what the word generative means. It makes stuff up. So generative AI, using large language models, is a content creation mechanism. It can do things like data analysis, and it can make things adaptable by using these models and AI systems to create output. Agentic AI, I see, as more about decision making. So its ability to control and navigate systems and workflow. And as you can see here, it's about solving problems or activities. It's acting autonomously, so it doesn't ask you to trigger every step in a workflow or conversation. And it's interactive and it can help with planning. So agentic AI, even though it has the word gen in it, is slightly more about the workflow, whereas generative AI is about content creation and decision making. Together, they can operate, but they are slightly different, right, in terms of their application. Now, I also get often asked, what is the difference between an AI assistant and an AI agent? And here's a graphic that hopefully helps represent that. An AI assistant is something that might help you navigate somewhere. So here you could see something like a Google Maps or directing drivers on a route or a journey. So that's an AI assistant. It's understanding the intent of the user and helping you navigate, but it isn't necessarily doing the work for you. Whereas an AI agent actually operates with that agency. So it's actually, in this case, remote control driving the vehicle. Now, some of you looking at this graphic may actually know, might be actually slightly concerned with some of these images. It looks like the AI agent is driving into oncoming traffic. I want you to keep that thought in mind, because I'm going to come back to a topic later around governance, and you might see why that's as important as this autonomy and driving these vehicles. So hopefully that scene sets. We've now got generative AI and agentic AI. They're slightly different, but they often work together. AI assistants moving now to AI agents. And I was talking earlier to Simon. He was also pretty excited about this concept called Model Context Protocol, or MCP. And MCP is a new way that these agents or systems now talk together. So if you look at something like doing work, maybe in your email and your Slack accounts, and you find that sometimes you are going out and doing separate tasks or activities, that can actually be called by an AI application. And it's using this Model Context Protocol. You can really think of MCP now as almost like a universal adapter, starting to connect these systems. And that's an important advent because now we're starting to talk about systems talking to each other. Now, along with MCP, which has been a great enabler to allowing these systems to communicate, there's also a new advent called agent-to-agent protocol. And this is really more dynamic. It's instead of going to a system that might be something like a traditional API call, think of something like a transaction request screen. That's not necessarily doing the whole workflow, but an agent is more dynamic. As I mentioned, it could be using generative AI, decision-making and workflow. An agent calling another agent means that really complex workflow and tasks can be passed between the tools without the intervention of the operator. So they're two big advances, if you like, in communication across these systems. The aspiration is that ideally these tools will learn and automate and dynamically do a lot of that work effort. However, I find many organizations that workflow is actually in your control. You might want to set up how much agency actually operates in their systems so you can put some guardrails and directions on how tasks are performed. So that's a quick snapshot of some of the most topical terms and phrases in the AI technology stack that are doing the rounds now. So fundamentally, there's a big shift in AI happening right now. Generative AI was about AI that can build things for you. So things like large language models, doing RAG pattern analysis, that was about content creation, the generative AI piece. Then we've evolved to things like assistants. Assistants help you navigate actions and workflows. So that's things like your advanced chatbots now moving to virtual assistants. So that's AI that can talk with you. Now we're at the point that AI can do things for you. So these agents can now interoperate between other agents and do complex workflows and tasks. So that's the point that we're at now. And if you look at your workplace, you may have noticed that there's a number of these agents existing. So we're talking about Office productivity tools now on the desktop. If you go to your web browser, you're now getting things like AI assistants and overviews. Individual applications like even photos are using AI capabilities for redaction. You're looking at SAP and Salesforce and other ERP providers also providing agents in their framework. So knowledge workers now have a number of these agents available to them. And it turns out that is actually going to become a problem for many organizations. It's like an AI Wild West, a sprawl of these capabilities, and knowledge workers can occasionally get overwhelmed. And that can be difficult if you want to do that workflow that we talked about earlier. So, while these agents can be great enablers if you're doing work in an individual tool, we actually want to work across those tools and break down those silos. We also need to manage the agents we use. Some of these are really good at specific tasks, but they need to be controlled or called when needed. And we do find that in market, a lot of these technologies sometimes don't make the production outcome because there are some gaps. It might be around regulation or trust or these guardrails. And that's a big challenge if you're going to get that productivity return that we talked about later. So, given this landscape is fastly evolving, IBM believes the answer is to orchestrate them. If you orchestrate these agents, you can see here, you could get a standard interface or your conversation channel of choice to use an orchestration layer for Agentic AI, and that can call agents you own, agents you build, something provided off the shelf, and connect to your data, tools, and workflows. That's a higher level now to coordinate all those individual agents under a framework. And it just so happens we call this offering Watson X Orchestrate for that very reason. So now we've got the ability for knowledge workers to use an experience, a tool of choice to control all this workflow and tasks across the enterprise. And ultimately, that's the sort of productivity return that we'd like to deliver and control how these agents are used and what tasks they're doing. Okay, that means that you will see a lot from vendors, as you probably have now, that are building these agents, and IBM works in partnership with these providers. So you'll see a lot of capabilities across ServiceNow and Workday and so forth, providing these agents to businesses that now you can work multiple teams, multiple agents, multiple workflows, all through a single prompt of your choice, maybe a Slack interface or a bot. This is like a catalog of capabilities now that you can orchestrate across your enterprise. And ultimately, this is about working in combination, openness, across application vendors and clouds. You can use Copilot as your standard interface, but now use orchestration to talk to other tools outside potentially the Microsoft stack. Things like Oracle, SAP, Salesforce can now all be part of one consistent work stream. And that allows you to modernize at your own pace how far these tools are operating across your enterprise and have some flexibility in what products you include over time. So that orchestration layer really becomes important to enabling your business to move at its own pace. Okay, so we think this is the future of work. The way that we do things every day has changed. You might be using AI tools to create new content. Now you're able to do workflows and call these other systems dynamically. And we believe that future looks really good if you are orchestrating that capability, using the investments you have, and making sure it's available to your workforce to realize that productivity return. Okay, just a reminder that there's a Q&A channel, a chat interface that you can raise any questions. I'll just pause right there. And Danica, can I just check, are there any questions? Is the messaging coming through okay so far?
I'm just checking. We don't have any questions just yet.
No problem.
So you're obviously covering everything in great detail, but we'll keep an eye on it.
No worries. So look, don't feel shy, people. Feel free to put anything in, but I'll go through some more content and hopefully we can create some more conversation. So that's the, if you like, the role of agentic AI rolling out across industry. Now let's talk a bit about the journey, how that might look. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to talk a bit about IBM's journey. We've actually been using these tools for a while because we wanted to create a capability at scale. And we did that in-house because we're also on an internal mission to provide productivity across our enterprise. So let's look at what that journey might look like. We actually use these orchestration capabilities across a number of digital labor functions. So for example, we use it for HR. We use it for our IT service desk support. We have bots that assist our sales team in creating and researching content. We also have partnerships where we deliver this as procurement. So these are, if you like, accelerators in the orchestrate world that help you do certain experiences. And you can see some results here about faster ways to actually work back office processes or digital labor to create an outcome. And here's an example of that. This is a short video of our Ask HR bot. This was a service that's introduced and available to all IBM employees. And I'll walk you through a scenario of what these technologies look like. This is the bot, or if you like, the communication layer. I'm just going to ask natural language questions of the system, and behind the scenes, it's going to orchestrate those agents. Here I've just asked for, let's request time off. And what it's doing is it's actually going to SAP SuccessFactors, and it's telling me how much time I have available, and even allows me to go and request leave. You'll see that button there. So it's not only giving me information, it's also allowing the action to occur. Now I'm going to ask for an employee verification letter, because I was actually looking for, say, an apartment submission, and I needed a letter to prove my employment. That was also coming from a back-end system. You can see here now instructions on how I do that, but this is now self-service. I don't have to send a request to get a formal document created. This is available to me now, and if you're a manager, it also gives you guidance on how that request can be issued. I'm now asking our education system how many learning hours I've completed this year. And for any IBMers on the call, I've actually done a lot more learning since I recorded this demo. But here you can see that it's gone to our learning system, which is a back-end system, and it tells me how much work I've done, and I can even issue a completion report. All this is just happening through natural language, through that prompt you're seeing below. And I'm going to ask now the status of my last 2 expenses. I travel a bit, I'm incredibly diligent as a corporate system. I want to make sure that my expenses, particularly coffee receipts, are being processed. And here you can see this is actually going to our payroll and expense system, which runs in Workday. And it's telling me that I have different options I can select. It's pulling out the travel and expense system. And here you can see the last couple of claims that were made. And that's coming dynamically. I can even go and request some further work there. You'll see that prompt box giving me options to take that further. And finally, I might be curious, what benefits do I have as an employee to the organization? Now, remember, this system is actually running across 65 countries. So this is coming back and telling me from our HR systems the sort of entitlements I have. And notice, just as importantly, right at the end there, it also allows me to contact an HR representative. So this is just a quick walkthrough. I've done a number of requests that I can do many things. I've navigated multiple backend systems dynamically. I've just used plain simple English. There are about 4 or 5 different systems you've seen coming back with these results. I'm able to do the work on demand, but I also can request a ticket to an HR professional. And I find that's often important to remind people that, yes, you can keep humans in the loop, but they want to be involved on, high value work activities. In our case, HR professionals are directed to complex cases rather than answering everything I put in this chat and doing that standard question and answer work that could be done self-service and on demand. So that's actually a practical example of how these tools might work in the workplace. You could have a prompt or a chat interface of your choice, an experience layer, and do that work. So for IBM, that was actually a journey. We started with something like a chatbot. Now, chatbots are pretty old now. We're talking about 10 years technology. And chatbots are fine if you're doing things like I call it an interactive FAQ list. So it's like a decision tree. It's really good if the answer's in prepared content, but if you go off script, then they get very limited. So our expectation has moved. And in IBM, when we released the Ask HR, first it was an assistant. So it was giving you directions on how to do things and request services. Now we've rolled it out, it is an agent, so it actually calls those systems dynamically, and you've seen that interaction there. And the most recent update, which happened at the start of this year, is it's personalized. So it understands details about my location, my entitlements, regulation, and it can tailor those services and requests in those interactions. That's how you see the evolution over time. So one of the advantages of a system like this is that IBM actually moved in January this year from Workday to SAP SuccessFactors, which is a big shift when you think about your HR systems. But no IBM employee knew, because we were using the same chat and it just got redirected in the back end by those agent calls. So that gives security, if you like, to your end users. They don't have to reskill or retrain every time you introduce a new system because it's just natural language. And you're just using that same experience to get to the outcome. And that's the potential of those agents in action. So when people ask me about a good example of an AI system being applied, I often think of Ask HR because every IBM employee uses this globally. And you can see some of the improvements. We've got 11 million interactions through the HR system. Our net promoter score was drastically improved because before it used to be an offshore ticketing system. Now it's on demand. And we get a huge increase in capability, and that personalization and self-service is really enabling, particularly if you want to do your own self-service across your HR records. So here's some of the things that we learned from that journey. Firstly, when you're looking at these projects, absolutely think big, but start small in terms of scope. Put it usually to an internal knowledge worker team that can accelerate the outcome, that you can control and manage the experience, and it creates a high value return. Then you can grow over time. Also think about your end user adoption first. Start with the experience. What tools do they want to use, and how would that productivity benefit? And then educate people. Make sure that they understand what's going on. If there are guardrails or a social contract, definitely highlight that as well. And that'll help your user adoption. Always focus on the ROI, because that's a successful project, is when it's delivering return to individuals and in production. And then create your own champions or people who use the tools to help others take that journey as well. We find that's really practical in terms of AI adoption. Okay, so from there, let's go on and talk about something I alluded to earlier. Using these technologies requires governance and guardrails. And that's actually an important aspect that IBM focuses on with our customers. AI governance or trust is important when using these systems if you're going to apply them to production outcomes. Here's an example now of those capabilities of agents I talked about earlier on. Orchestration, the ability to build your own or use these pre-built agents. Coordinating those together is a new field that we call AI agent ops. So it's a bit like DevOps, but for these AI agents. But there is also an evolving field called Agentic AI governance. And this is about AI guardrails. That's about making sure things are trustworthy. So IBM has created assets in this space. We call it the AI Risk Atlas that helps you understand how these tools can be guardrail and regulated. So we can provide explainability. We can make it compliant against regulation. We can minimize bias and hallucination. And these are things we need to address if we're going to be providing output to end users. A local example that was presenting in Gartner this week in Sydney was University of Auckland and their journey to AI governance. They started with a personalized student onboarding experience, so that chat interface I talked about earlier, and that could do things like build a personalized curriculum for student onboarding. That was great. But most recently, they rolled out AI governance alongside that technology to 50,000 staff and students. Now they can do things like guardrail hallucination, harmfulness, toxicity. They can ensure the values of the university are met in terms of respect, innovation, and integrity by using this platform in guiding their staff and student experiences. So agentic AI is a fast-moving space, but it's, to me, a very important conversation when you think about end users using these technologies. And IBM has great value in this space. We created dedicated assets coming from our global risk and compliance tools and now apply them to AI systems so we can help address that trust issue that organizations might need when delivering customer services. And these are just a few examples of how these technologies have been applied. We obviously operate globally with many customers, but we've got some fantastic references in New Zealand alone. I'm thinking NZ Tech is an example of documentation review for medical analysis tools. South Waikato City Council uses this for knowledge workers. Already mentioned University of Auckland. Some great local example of these technologies being applied that will evolve to what we call agentic AI and AI assistance. And my advice when you think about taking this journey is start with a use case. Look across your business and ask yourself two questions. What really grinds your gears? What is like a process that you send off and goes into a black hole and takes a long time to return? That might be an area that you could get productivity lift or optimization with these technologies. And the other thing is, what would be awesome? What would be great if you could do something on demand or self-service or dynamically, just like you saw through that walkthrough? Those are great starting points to think about an agentic AI conversation. So these are some accelerators from IBM that are task orientated to those digital labor examples, because we've already built assets and we make them available to customers so they can apply across their business. But your journey may differ. You may have something around process or forms or documentation that you may want to automate. That's a very easy starting point for these technologies. And ultimately, we find success happens through co-creation. So myself and our local New Zealand team, we can bring together a squad, we call them client engineering, to help co-create or take these journeys. And they're very low risk and fast time to value. Usually it starts with maybe a half-day discovery session to set some scope. And we've delivered some outcomes in 2 to 4 weeks in evaluation environments. And that helps you know how these technologies can be applied and delivered, and ultimately, hopefully more productive in your day-to-day work. And we believe this will change the future of work. Sooner or later, we may even say goodbye to keyboards and be talking directly to these systems and doing things dynamically, just as we wanted, as though it could read our minds. Well, there we go. That was the formal content that I wanted to walk through today. So I can appreciate there was a lot of content there and maybe a few terms, but more than happy if there's any questions or conversations in the chat. Yeah, let's start a dialogue.
We have got a question. Is this aimed at bigger business, or are the cost models enabling smaller business to get on board with this?
That's a fantastic question, right? Now, I'm mindful I work for IBM, and sometimes that comes with an impression that it only works at top end of town. That's actually not the case. In fact, our orchestrate technologies start from as little as 1,000 New Zealand dollars a month. That's the entry point for a cloud service. But we do find that some of the examples I talked about, NZ Tech, South Waikato City Council, these are a small number of users just using a cloud service. Really fast time to value. Some of those prototypes were like a 2-week exercise. I find this accessible for all. And obviously we right size that investment, but if you're doing small knowledge worker activities for things like document and process automation, it's very readily accessible.
Okay. Simon, you just put a note there, interested to learn and share costing around the scoping sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone who wants to take this journey, I mean, our co-creation exercise, we bring that technology expertise to you, so there's no initial cost of investment up front. We can work with business partners, though, that can give you an entire process end-to-end and a whole journey map. So I find 3 to 6 months is a really good time frame to put these systems into production. I find that a small scale prototype is the best place to start. Certainly that was the case with like Auckland University. We had an internal prototype with a business partner that created a new prompt online. Students started to use that. Now with their new release, they've expanded that capability, and sometimes you add new services and grow. So something like one use case might grow to 5 or 6 AI use cases, but you've actually got the framework and the platform to roll those out. So it can become a production line. Starting is usually the biggest change, mainly about the experience and change management. But what we've found now, for example, Auckland University found that their online portal experience and the personalization they were giving was as good, if not better, than actually talking to a human being on the phone. And that just means that there's some really good productivity and ROI there, as well as cost benefit, right? I mean, the intent here is to give you back more productive work hours in your day, and that you will be doing more high value creative tasks than chasing down data or sending things into a process black hole. So we build ROI, if you like, to help you understand that adoption. And we even introduce capabilities and the tools to tell you what it would cost to use some of these models or cloud services. It's part of a FinOps practice to let you know in advance what would the ROI look like. And that to me is a sure sign of success.
Okay. Doesn't look like we have any other questions. So we are able to share Kieran's slides today, and if you would like to take the conversation offline and deep dive a little bit further in relation to your business, Kieran is available, and as he mentioned, there is a local team here as well that we can help facilitate that meeting. But thank you so much for your time, Kieran. We still haven't got any more questions.
I think I know why there aren't many questions. It's just it all seemed reasonably straightforward, which is great.
I hope so.
Well, I'm really keen to see if we can get some POCs to some discoveries happening with you guys. And hopefully we'll be putting some material on the website to invite customers to engage in such. It's kind of a gotta do.
Yeah, and look, if you're in there with conversations and people are talking about these tools or technologies, just think back to, if you like, that demo I was using with a bot. If you've been using ChatGPT at home, you're actually on the way to becoming a prompt engineer. Might want to update LinkedIn; it'll make you very popular. That's where these interactions are going. And experience doing work is really at the heart of agentic AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. So Kieran's leaving IBM. He's going to be working for Acquire soon.
Yeah. So, and this content we share following the call and the recording as well. So that's my gift to you, Danica. So, and if anyone does want any background or white papers, for example, on our website, you can find the Gartner report about agentic AI. You can also navigate some of these tools, but absolutely reach out to myself. We got Nick and Lizzie and Stuart Sweetman, a part of the local team. We're across Auckland and Wellington, and I'm often there myself. In fact, I think I'm meant to be traveling over next month on a couple of visits. So I'd be more than happy to pick up the conversation, should that be of interest.
Cool. Great.
All right.
Yeah, it winds us up, doesn't it?
It does. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you again, Kieran. And we'll be talking to you all again soon. Thank you.
It's great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Okay.
Really appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.
You too.